Alright guys, TacticalRab here, and I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome to Championship Sunday here at Toronto, another top 4 showdown for the second event in a row. FaZe of course will go in as the favourites, but OpTic tech to say do not count them out today in the losers bracket. They played very sloppy Call of Duty yesterday, no doubt about it, in the Toronto and even in that Miami series, but they survived. That's all that matters, and Priestahh and Dashy seem to be implying they're going to be back on track today. A long road ahead. Who's going to win the tournament? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, it's a drama to dive into here on the challenges side, as you would always expect. We've gone down to the top 6, I believe, going into the Sunday, and I think it's a bit of a different schedule to what we saw earlier in the season, because back in Boston, they did the challenges grand finals on main stage before the actual championship Sunday began, whereas this time it's still going to be run in the challenges side, which is probably fine because it's just such a nice setup that I've got over there for challenges that it makes sense to use it. But we did have a lot of matches go, and I think it was a very smooth run of weekend. We'll say it, I don't want to jinx this today, but you know, so far there's been no real tech issues, no real delays, and it's been running very smoothly. Even the Friday, it was a long day, it only finished a few minutes after it was scheduled to finish, even with all the 3-2s. So they were doing a killer job of production. Yesterday finished ahead of schedule. Obviously FaZe 3-0ing Subliners helped kind of push that in the right direction, and also even challenges has run very smoothly with no real delays. So stellar job for all the production team and the venue for putting on what's been a fantastic event so far, and I'm sure that it's going to be crowned off in some glory today. But as Hixie says, got people bringing their own mix amps with pre-saved settings to LAN. Grow up, he says. Now then we get this drama, because they were talking about Fire 40. I watched a bit of the series actually last night in challenges. So Fire's on Spart's team, and they went up 2-0 on OmTic. Then they got reverse swept, I think. I'm pretty sure they did anyway, because they went up 2-0 and now they're no longer in the tournament. So that could only be what have happened. So that's what Fire says. You know, I had all of you screaming at me from across the stage or whatever. And then we had Denza and Fire get into it a little bit. So, you know, Fire goes by Fire now, formerly Fire 40. But Denza says, we're letting people cheat on LAN. Fire 40 using his little sound EQ mix amp at LAN. What a dream. Now, I think it's probably worth clarifying here that I don't really think that you can just use a mix amp and it turns on sound EQ. Like, you can use a mix amp with EQ settings, like equalization settings, but kind of like everything has that. Sound EQ or loudness equalization, that's like a setting on the PC which I don't believe was enabled, but still people are debating whether you should be able to bring your own mix amp to have your own sound settings on, which are beneficial even if it's not officially sound EQ, but I guess it depends what you refer to as sound EQ. Anyway, he basically says, look, I've got side tone on, and I don't really know what all these things refer to, but they had a bit of a back and forth here anyway, talking about why he brought my own one, and they have a pretty interesting back and forth here, shall we say, that I'll just scroll through real quick before we get to the conclusion where, Denza and Fire get into it somewhat, and, well, eventually, one's moved on to the tournament, one hasn't, because these are the final 6 teams. In the winners' finals, and this is going to be a banger, like an absolute banger. We have OpTic, which is basically their Awakening, Cammy, Purge, and Yee's team. And these guys were looking really good yesterday. I'm sure on the pre-show today that we're going to run on the Breaking Point channel, which will be live in a few hours' time, we'll probably look through some of the stats actually from challenges so far, because that's all getting tracked, which is sensational. FaZe Black, though, that's Brack Rex succeeding the team. I think Brack has been frying this weekend. He had like a 1.6 yesterday. Asim, though, well, he replaced Purge on Vegas. Then when he came back down to challenges, he replaced Purge on FaZe Black. Now Purge is on this roster and is seemingly playing very well so far. So that's going to be a banger winner final. Like, if one of those two teams wins it, it's going to be really interesting. Like, this Purge redemption arc story is absolutely at the top of mind right now in challenges. Other notable teams, though, in losers, Noisy and Co, I believe they were the guys that knocked out Team War, possibly, which is like Bants and those guys that fell short. OmTic of Weeman, Mythics, Hixie, and Vortex after reverse sweeping, they're still alive. Major Maniac's team, of course, with 2 ReeaL, and then Soul's Perception, which is RCT's classic Prolute and Capsidol, they're still around as well. So that, of course, is going to conclude today, but yesterday on the main stage, we had a number of very interesting series. OpTic versus Toronto was fascinating because at the start, it felt like, yeah, OpTic are probably going to win this series. They won the sub-base relatively emphatically. They then had a great chance to win that round 1 of the Search and Destroy, but it didn't happen. They probably should have won the control. They probably should have won the game 4. Like, OpTic could have, 3-0'd that series, 4-0'd that series, 3-1 that series, whatever. But that's not what happened. And even the Game 5 was an invasion search that OpTic are pretty good at, I would say. I liked that map pool a lot for OpTic yesterday, but it was maybe reminiscent somewhat of what happens when they played FaZe. And, earlier on in the stage 1, when they played some interesting set of maps, and FaZe probably should have lost, but they didn't, and OpTic ended up not taking the victory in a situation where they could well have closed out some of those maps. That high-rise control, I still kind of remember from that series of several weeks ago at this point. So, we talked about this before with OpTic. For some reason, when push comes to shove, every year they have at least one event where they lose in inexplicable fashion. But they're not dead yet. Of course, they go on to play Miami. It was a close series with Miami, to be honest. Miami's search has been good. They lost the search to OpTic in this series. They dominated the control, thanks largely to Pred, and they did end up winning the 6-star hardpoint, but that could have gone either way as well. And it just felt like OpTic's rotations, their breaks, were nowhere near as clean as you'd particularly expect against a team like Heretics, who are certainly better since the acquisition of ReeaL, but aren't exactly unbelievable or anything to quite that effect. And on the other side of the station, of course they didn't play yesterday, but they may play today depending. FaZe. They've now won 13 series in a row. They tied the record set by FaZe back in Carbor. Obviously, with this trio on the right here, back at the day it was Arcetes, and all they have to do, but if they beat Toronto today, which Drazah's made a bit of a habit of lately, they will break their own records. And who's going to beat them, right? It may happen today, but they are obviously heavy favourites coming in. They dispatched of New York, and Toronto can put up a fight, I do believe. But it's going to be so challenging, especially because of the map pool as well, I think is worthy of discussion. We'll get to that in a second. Before we get into the Pred stuff as well, I wanted to mention this, because yesterday we saw Simp tweet this out, don't forget who made you and all this type of stuff. And it's funny, right, because Simp, obviously, having beaten Seattle Surge after all the drama that went down with 04, deserving of talking all his trash. But he talks trash, and then he still kind of gets clout. Even when he actually wins and talks trash, he still ends up on the receiving end of something, because basically says, look, I made you. And Surge is like, nah, you didn't make us, that was pretty made us, don't think, right? And with his Rookie of the Year trophy. So, yeah, this was pretty brutal, to be fair. Good reply, I think, from MettalZ here, actually, as well. Yeah, here we go. Nice try, guys. This is the man that really made you back in the MW19 at Car War days. But speaking of those teams, this is how the CDL standings look, of course. We'll see how the top 4 plays out over the coming days. But now the tournament is concluded for all of the bottom 8 teams, as usual. This is how it looks. And man, is this interesting. We have Boston at 50, Gorillas at 110. I think Gorillas may be chalked, to be honest, just because they're trash online. They have a worse map win percentage than Boston do. And they got top 12 at this LAN. Tough to see them making a run, but of course, it's not impossible. The 8th place cutoff is 120. But Miami and Surge getting that top 6, that's a nice little boost for them, absolutely, up to 130. Thieves at 125. So it's absolutely all to play for between, these 7 teams for the World Championship going forwards. This, though, is just some of the reaction from the OpTic guys to exactly what's happened yesterday, because, understandably, Scumps in your Hex were like, how is it even possible to lose that round of the control? They talk about, obviously there's been lots of analysis on what they could and should have done differently, but it was just one example, probably the chief example of sloppy Call of Duty being played by OpTic yesterday, and as Dashy says, got to lock in and play for the win, which kind of implies that he felt like they were playing not to lose, if you see what I'm saying. Like they went into those situations thinking, okay, especially that control round maybe, they're, we're in a position, we're about to win this round, but I close out the game, go 2-1, potentially go 3-1 and beat Ultra right here, right now, and then they, don't play as they should. They play not to lose, and they lose anyway, which is, obviously not acceptable from OpTic's perspective. So Dashy wants to make sure they lock in. Obviously, Kenny tweeted this out yesterday too. Terrible series out of us. Horrible first one for me against Toronto. Got to come different tomorrow. No other way to put it, because the way that OpTic played yesterday, that did not look like a championship winning team against Toronto or even against Miami Heretics. So they've got to play better. Do they have it in them? Yes. Do they have enough in them to beat FaZe? That's another question. Can they beat New York? Yes. Can they beat Toronto? I do believe so. FaZe is going to be a serious challenge, though, on the form that OpTic have showed this weekend so far. And again, Toronto, yes, they made Sunday, but this Toronto venue and event seems to still remain somewhat problematic for this team. But I just wanted to share what Pred had to say real quick, certainly on the playing sloppy COD angle.
You know, obviously, I think we just, honestly, today we played really sloppy. I feel like there were so many winning situations. I feel like even in the Toronto series, you know, had a defense on invasion control. We had like a 60-point lead in 6-star. And, you know, we just, we threw the game away, honestly. So we're playing sloppy COD today, and I'm just glad to get to Sunday so we can re-lock in and, you know, try to get the job done.
OpTic do, however, move through an all-time CDL best 15-2 record following a winners round loss. I will say that this is a lot of the times because they were losing in winners round 1. There's been quite a few occasions, like over the last couple of years, they've lost in winners round 1, and then they'll play a team that they should beat absolutely in the next round. Whereas FaZe, if they ever lose in winners bracket, they're dropping to the losers finals probably, where they're going to play tough competition. So, you know, interesting stat, thought I'd worthy of mention. But here are the top 4, right? I mean, I did think that we might get one other team this event. I thought maybe New York would drop out and somebody else would come through. I also think that if Ravens were to have beaten Surge, I think Ravens would have stood a better fight against Subliners than Surge did. And maybe Sib wouldn't have like gone nuclear because he wasn't playing 0-4, for example. But yeah, they of course make it to top 4 anyway. These are your favorites on screen. This is OpTic Texas in those championship whites I imagine we're going to see once again out there today. And they play the Subliners in the first round of losers bracket we'll get to in a second. These are the KD so far. And, well, what to say about this? Basically, the entire FaZe team is in the top 4, with the exception of Simp, who's at a 1.19. So if Simp is your lowest performing player by the numbers, and Drazah is leading the line with a 1.35, I don't really know what you're meant to do at that point. And sure, they've played Miami and they've played Subliners, maybe not the 2 strongest competitors in the league, especially because Pred's played against Toronto now and he still has a 1.11, HyDra with a 1.16, aBeZy's right up here, Sib's right up here, but of course, aBeZy now out of the tournament, Scrappy though with a 1.31, Fellow as well deserves credit for his performance this event. But of course, we are now on to Championship Sunday itself. I did want to show what Octane had to say on this though, because Rio is an insanely good map for FaZe. And I genuinely think that if you want to beat FaZe, well, it's tough to say what you do. You don't really want to play FaZe on Rio. Certainly Hardpoint they're unbelievably good at. Search and Destroy they're very good at. So do you have to ban Rio against them every time they play? Because they're going to ban sub-base. So if you ban Rio against them, then maybe you try and gain some sort of leverage in the map pool. But the problem is that they're really good at Vista as well. I don't know if the plan might be to just try and chow FaZe on Rio and say, you know what, like if we beat you on it, which is very unlikely, but if we beat you on it, maybe they're going to think, oh damn, like maybe we are vulnerable, are we good on LAN, is it Championship Sunday, kind of nerves coming in again. I don't think FaZe are really vulnerable to that. They seem so confident, so locked in with Drazah, especially on the team, that I don't really know if you can rattle FaZe. But if you want to win, you might have to try, and that might be trying to challenge them on Rio, but that might just be an absolute death sentence, to be fair, if you decide to, because apparently they win it in, like, every scrim they play, they win Rio, hardpoint in. So, you know, they're going to lose probably in this environment. But anyway, Ultra will have to come up with a plan how they try and tackle FaZe, because it ain't going to be easy. And obviously, Scrappy was saying, like, bring it on, we're going to chow them, and they're going to bring the confidence, but FaZe are also highly confident. Difficult to see past FaZe today, of course, for the tournament. Ultra can beat them, but it seems kind of unlikely to me. OpTic, I do expect to make a bit of a run. I do think they should take down the Subliners. I feel like they are the better team. They did so last event, of course, to make the grand finals. They played a sub-base hardpoint that predominated, and he's been doing that as well for the last couple of months since last event. And I'm expecting an OpTic Toronto banger rematch in the losers finals here, which who knows how that's going to go. But however it goes, it's really difficult to look past FaZe today for the championship. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Hey, Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas.
What's the difference?